I was 6 years old when I realized that the man I'd been writing letters to every December wasn't just some magical figure in a red suit living at the North Pole, but the very man who had abandoned me and my mother before I could even crawl. And let me tell you, that realization didn't come with the sound of sleigh bells. It came with a shattering of my entire world right in the middle of a crowded shopping mall on Christmas Eve. Imagine sitting on a stranger's lap, looking into eyes that feel hauntingly familiar, only to see a flicker of recognition and guilt that no Santa should ever have. And then watching your mother's face turn as white as a ghost as she realizes she's standing face to face with her greatest nightmare. I need to know from the very start, if you discovered your biggest family secret while surrounded by hundreds of happy strangers and festive music, would you scream the truth or would you stay silent to protect the magic for everyone else? This isn't just a story about a kid meeting Santa. It's a story about a betrayal so deep it redefined what Christmas meant to me forever. My mom, Sarah, was a superhero in my eyes, working 2 jobs to keep our small apartment warm, and making sure there was always a gift under our tiny plastic tree, even if it was just a pair of warm socks or a used toy from the thrift store. She never talked about my father, and for the longest time, I just assumed he was some brave soldier or an explorer who got lost. But as I got older, the silence around his name grew heavier, like a physical weight in our living room. My mother's eyes would always get a bit misty whenever a Christmas commercial showed a complete family sitting around a fireplace, and I learned early on not to ask questions that would make those tears fall. We had our traditions, though, and the biggest one was the annual trip to the Grand Plaza Mall to see the big man himself. That year, 2012, felt different. There was a tension in the air, a sense of impending change that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I had written my letter weeks in advance, but I didn't ask for a bike or a game console. I asked Santa for a photo of my dad, thinking that if anyone had access to the records of everyone in the world, it would be the guy with the naughty and nice list. When we arrived at the mall, the line was incredibly long, snaking past the fountain and the giant gingerbread house, and the air was thick with the smell of roasted nuts and cheap perfume. My mom looked tired, her coat was thin, and she kept checking her watch because she had a shift starting later that evening, but she smiled for me, holding my hand tight as we shuffled forward. As we got closer to the ornate golden chair where Santa sat, I noticed this Santa was different from the ones in the movies. He was tall, with broad shoulders that seemed to slump under the weight of the red velvet coat. And his beard looked a bit too real, not like the itchy cotton ones I'd seen on the street corners. When it was finally my turn, I felt that typical rush of adrenaline and nerves, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. My mom stayed back a few feet, as she always did, letting me have my private moment with Santa, while she fumbled with her old camera to get the perfect shot. I climbed up onto his lap, and the first thing I noticed wasn't the smell of cookies or peppermint, but the faint, sharp scent of cedarwood and Old Spice. The exact same scent that lingered on an old sweater my mom kept hidden in the bottom drawer of her dresser. I looked up, ready to recite my wish, but the words died in my throat because when I looked into those blue eyes behind the half-moon spectacles, they weren't twinkling with holiday cheer. They were wide with a sudden, paralyzing shock. The man froze, his hand stopping midair as he went to pat my shoulder. And for a long second, the entire mall seemed to go silent, the carols fading into a dull hum in my ears. He didn't say ho ho ho, he whispered my name, Leo, in a voice that was barely a breath, a voice that sounded like it had been scraped raw by years of regret. I stared at him, my brain trying to connect the dots, wondering how Santa knew my name when I hadn't even handed him my letter yet. And then I saw a small scar just above his left eyebrow, shaped like a crescent moon, identical to the one I saw every morning in the mirror. It was in that moment, with the fake snow falling from the mall rafters and the flashbulbs of other parents' cameras popping around us, that the world stopped being magical and started being terrifying. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I realized I wasn't sitting on the lap of a legend. I was sitting on the lap of a ghost. I turned my head to look at my mom, wanting her to tell me I was wrong, but she had stopped moving entirely, the camera slipping from her hands and dangling by its strap as she stared at the man in the red suit with a look of pure, unadulterated horror. So there I was, caught between a mother who looked like she'd seen a dead man walking and a Santa Claus who was trembling under his red coat. Before I reveal what happened when the beard finally came off and the mall security stepped in, I want you to stop and think about this. If you were my mother, standing there in that moment, would you have snatched your child and run away? Or would you have demanded the truth right there in front of the whole world? Tell me in the comments what you would have done, because what happened next changed our lives in ways I'm still trying to process a decade later. My mom didn't run. She marched forward, her face a mask of fury that I had never seen before. And she didn't care about the line of crying toddlers or the annoyed parents behind us. She reached out and grabbed the man's fake white beard, pulling it down to reveal a face that was weathered, tear-streaked, and undeniably related to mine. "David?" she whispered, but it sounded more like a curse than a name. The Santa stood up, nearly knocking me off his lap, and tried to speak, his hands shaking as he reached out toward her, but she stepped back as if he were made of fire. The mall staff scrambled, trying to figure out why the star attraction was having a breakdown, and the manager rushed over, but my mom didn't hear them. She was looking at the man who had promised to be there for my birth, but disappeared into the night with the rent money instead. It turns out, my father hadn't been an explorer or a hero. He had been a man struggling with demons he couldn't beat, and after years of running, he had ended up back in our city, broke and desperate, taking the only job he could find that allowed him to hide in plain sight. He told us later, through tears and a heavy legal mediation, that he had taken the job at our local mall specifically hoping to see us from a distance, never thinking I'd actually end up on his lap. The confrontation was messy. There were shouts, tears, and eventually, the mall security had to escort us all to a private office because the Santa was no longer fit for duty. That Christmas Eve, we didn't go home to open my one small gift. We spent it in a police station and then a quiet diner, where my mom finally told me the truth about the man who gave me my eyes but nothing else. He tried to apologize, tried to offer us the money he'd earned playing a saint, but my mom wouldn't take a cent of it, telling him that you can't buy back the years of where is he, with a few weeks of minimum wage. The aftermath was long and painful. He didn't suddenly become a perfect dad, and we didn't become a perfect family. He moved away again a few months later, unable to handle the guilt of seeing the life he'd missed out on, but that day gave me something more valuable than a toy. It gave me the truth. I learned that my mother was stronger than any man who ever left us, and I learned that sometimes, the things we wish for come to us in ways that break our hearts before they can heal them. Looking back, that was the last year I believed in the magic of Christmas, but it was the first year I truly understood the power of resilience. Life doesn't always give you a movie ending where everyone hugs and the snow falls perfectly. Sometimes it gives you a mall Santa who is just a broken man in a costume. If you think my mom did the right thing by exposing him right there, or if you think she should have protected my innocence for one more day, let me know. Like this video if you were on my side and think that honesty is better than a lie, even on Christmas. Subscribe for more stories like this that pull back the curtain on the secrets we keep. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I read every single one. I'll see you all in the next story.